I had to redo it today because it looked just terrible. I'm usually not like
Okay,
this, but
we are live now, guys. Welcome, everybody.
Hey.
My name is Marlissa Brigitte, and I'm with South Coast Almanac, and I'm with Corey Nuffer. And if you've been on our walking book tours, you know Corey. And we have two special guests today. We're super happy. Our special guest is Yara Zgheib, who is the author of our September book pick, No Land to Light On. She's also the author of The Girls on 17 Swan Street. Now I'm getting it completely. The Girls on 17 Swan Street. And she lives in Boston with twin 2-year-olds who are getting ready for bed now. So we're really grateful that she was able to, to join us today. And we have Stephanie Corbin from Footprints Cafe, who is the one who introduced me to the book and got me excited about it. So we thought we would maybe start off with a reading with Yara. And then we'll kind of go into a discussion. If you guys are listening and have any questions for Yara or Stephanie or anyone, feel free to put them in the comment section and I can pass them along. I'll be checking that from time to time. But we're just going to have a fun Q&A about this wonderful book. So Yara, if you want to take it away with your reading.
Sure. And thank you very much for having me. It really is an honor and a pleasure. I've had the opportunity to have a few exchanges with Marlissa over the past month, and it's been such a wonderful friendship. And Stephanie, thank you for introducing us to each other through the book. And Corey, it's wonderful to meet you. It's lovely to be here with all of you. So the passage that I'm going to read has been chosen by Corey, and it is, for those of you who do not know the book, this is the part where Sama has given birth to a little boy in a hospital in Boston. She's an immigrant, and so her son is born as an American. And this is the part where, within all the tumult and chaos of her husband has been, deported, and he's outside the country, and they're separated, and there's the whole angst that she's living. She receives the birth certificate that tells her that her son is an American. So this is Sama speaking. The envelope is addressed to Mr. Nasim Deeb in a cursive serif font imprinted in deep royal blue ink. My thumb traces every letter to be sure it's there. Then I turn the envelope over and break the seal. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, United States of America, Certificate of Birth. The words sound warm in my head. They trickle like honey. The paper is thick and luxuriously heavy. Its weight on my palm is sober and safe. This is not a dream. I press the document against the incubator's transparent wall. Look, little one, look. Nasim is drifting in his world, untouched and unmarked by ours. That's your name, Yazghir. This is your ticket. Out of that box, out of this room, to a world different, so different from mine. It's magnificent. I see it. You'll say your first words in English. Take your first steps on grass. Know the smell of earth after September rain. You will know snow, build snowmen. You will know how to throw a baseball, and Teta's lullabies, and the taste of peanut butter, sumac, thyme, toasted pine nuts. Your sun will rise over an ocean. Mine rose for the longest time over arid mountains. Nasim, your sun will rise over liquid horizons. Those will be wider and farther than even I could ever dream. You'll have origins, not roots. You'll have wings. Wait till you see the sky, Nasim. Wait till you could look out the window. The earth is pink and yellow. The morning sun has colored the Charles River purple. The air itself is chiffon layers of lavender. There is so much of it, so much space. It is a very beautiful world. Wait till you see it. Wait till we tell your father.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
That moment chokes me up.
Yeah. So I did wonder when you were, did you have your children at Mass General? Did you see that view of the Charles River?
Oh gosh, you dove right into it. So this novel wasn't a novel. when I initially wrote it, this novel was my diary. And yes, I did have my children at Mass General, and Nassim was originally not Nassim. He was twins in an incubator, and that was me showing them their birth certificates in the incubator. So yes, I did have that view of the Charles River, and that moment where I'm not American. I don't have a green card. I don't have an American passport. And so when they had their birth certificates, for me, this was, wow, look at the future I just gave them. Not I didn't give them anything. Look at this. So that's a very long story to your short question. Yes, I did have that view of the Charles River, and I did give birth to my children at Mass General.
See, that makes sense why the book felt so real to me. Like that's why I love this book so much, is because it felt so real. It felt like real life.
I just want to kind of go back to January when I walked into Footprints to the bookstore, and I said, Stephanie, what should I read? Do you remember exactly? I don't remember exactly what you said, but you said you must read this.
It's a must read.
And you don't do that all the time. I mean, you always have a good suggestion, but this was like.
But this was different. This book, it like I said, like, so it explains that it was coming from your diary, because you can feel the emotions. It felt real.
Yeah.
Especially that passage. Like, wow.
I also
thank you, Stephanie.
You, like, there are juxtapositions where you have, like, let's say Executive Order 13769, but then bumping up against that is this luxuriant, like, sensual, poetic prose, something that just like rips you open, and it redefines what sometimes are, legal documents. So even here you've got, and you situate the typeface so it looks a little, it denotes that sort of like, this is legal document. And then the next sentence is, the words sound warm in my head, they trickle like honey. Like, I've never thought of a birth certificate like that. And over, and I think this is the larger, for me, why fiction is so very important, is because you can, these great writers like you can really help you understand. And I need things like that, because often, especially with this executive order, I mean, it's so much, and it's it's horrifying, and it tends to make people want to check out or get overwhelmed, and you're able to bring beauty into this really ugly space, and that causes people it's so magical, because it makes you want to ruminate and be there and read about it. And this 2 pages, barely, not even 2 pages, you gracefully do that. But over and over in the whole book, now I'm just sounding really fanning over, but I just with this, like, a legal document. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I don't even know if you've worked in the government. I mean, your education makes me, and the way you write, a lot of in the book, the way you write with the I guess the bureaucratic machinations, the folks who work on the other side, the woman at the desk, can you talk a little bit about your own experiences? I guess this piggybacks a little bit too on your own life and how you moved from journal to fiction.
Oh, well, first, thank you very much for what you said. That's very humbling. You reminded me of something Chekhov said about how, and oh gosh, if I'm misquoting and Chekhov didn't say that, I apologize to the wider audience. I think it was Chekhov who said it. He said politicians use words to tell use facts to tell lies, whereas use words to tell lies, whereas poets use words to tell the truth, or something like that. I completely butchered that quote. Sorry, Chekhov. But the idea is, I fell in love with reading and writing, with books, because you can read words on a page. You can read Executive Order 13769, and it means absolutely nothing to you. You can see the headlines on television. I mean, there are wars going on all over the world. There are people dying every day. You know, hundreds killed in wherever, and it doesn't mean anything. But a great storyteller, and I don't consider myself one. Thank you for calling me that. But I'd like to become that. But I've read great storytellers who will make you understand the humanity and exactly what these words mean. And it is one thing to read Executive Order 13769 gets people deported, and a completely different thing to understand, oh my goodness, Sama and Hadi, these two people I know were separated. And when it touches you, it becomes real. And I studied international relations and political science because I wanted to do something good in the world, and I wanted to help people. And I worked in that field for a while, and I was quite disillusioned and quite saddened. But books and stories and poetry, that changes people too, because if you read a story and it touches you and it moves you, and you understand something, it changes your. It's like you were saying about the birth certificate. You'd never thought of a birth certificate that way, but now you do, and and I think that's something really powerful that books can do. And there are just such brilliant writers who made me want to do what I do, who just excel at that. That was a very winded answer. Your question was about my background. So my background, I was born in Lebanon. I've lived in many, many different places. I've lived in Glasgow. I lived in the US. I got a scholarship to, I got a Fulbright, and I did my master's in security studies in Washington, D.C., because I wanted to change the world and fix the world and, stop all the wars. And so I studied security, because you have to understand war in order to work for peace. And I did my PhD in international relations, and I studied oil and gas and its impact on countries that get torn apart, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you know anything about Lebanon, we've had more than our share of wars and fights and insurrections and revolutions and uprisings, and it's been an entertaining journey. So I think my experience is both personal. It's academic, definitely. I've studied this, but also when I was 15, the war between Hezbollah and Israel broke out in Lebanon, and we spent our summer working with refugees, and for the first time I saw people who yesterday were like you and me, and today are in their pajamas and have their bags, and that's all that's left of their lives. So I guess what informed the book was both having studied it and having lived it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And specifically as relates to this book, my husband and I were separated by an executive order, not 13769, and we're not Syrian, so it wasn't the travel ban, but there were a number of executive orders that were issued around the same time. And what happened was he was abroad renewing his visa, and I was in Boston with the children. And he called from Beirut to say he couldn't come back because he was because of an administrative order he was undergoing something called administrative processing, which is a very vague, boring word like birth certificate that actually means you're in legal and passport limbo. You don't have a visa, but you also don't not have a visa. You don't have a job, but you also don't not have a job. You can't return to the US to access your bank account and your apartment and the clothes that you left in your apartment, but you don't know if you're coming back. So that was the situation that we were in, and that was when I started writing this book. And there are 3 versions of this book. Version 1 was journal, version 2 was fiction, but it was not a good book. It was a very hurt book. And then version 3 is the book that you guys actually have.
Wow, so you basically wrote 2 books, 2 novels in a fairly short time.
3, and it wasn't even intentional. The first one was just journaling. It wasn't even journaling. I'm not a journaler, but it was just writing this down, just pouring my heart out on paper. And it was one very long sobbing manuscript of yeah.
So it makes me want, so you said you're not a journaler, so you're not journaling. I'm curious about what you're working on now. Are you are you working on something, or
I am working on I shouldn't be building this too much. I'm working on, I think, the book of my life. I'm so in love with this book. I've had this book in me for years and years and years. I think decades. And this book is so dear to my heart, and it's taking everything out of me. And I don't even know if I can write this book. And yes, I am working on a novel. Is the answer.
See,
Wow.
books like that, those are the books that are gonna be lifetime books. Like I need to read it like right now.
Oh God. I hope I can write it. It's strange. I've never considered myself a fiction writer or a novelist. I'm not a novelist. I'm really not. I don't know how to invent things. Everything I've ever written was true, even if it's not real. Like Sama and Hedy are not real, but it's Hemingway says you can only write what you know, and it's for me it's not a quality, it's more a fault. Like I can't. I wish I love reading Harry Potter, but I wish I could write that. I can't create worlds, and so it does make the writing harder because the book just becomes so it just becomes
Personal.
a part of you. It's
Yeah.
so personal. It is just so personal. Wow.
and
it is very personal.
I want to take exception to, I think you are a great storyteller. This book is amazing.
Thank
And I did read the Girls at 17 Swan and loved that as well. But
Oh.
you also said, I know I'm not a great storyteller, which I'm taking exception with, but I know great storytellers. And I'm just curious, who are some of your favorite storytellers when you think of that ranking of people that you aspire to be? Who are they?
Goodness. Oh my goodness. How much time do we have? Well, top of the top, and this is no secret, everybody knows this. My idol of idols is she's a Canadian writer called Mavis Gallant, and she's really not very well known. This is her centennial, so this year people are starting to reread her, and her books are being republished. Which, Stephanie, you totally need to stock up on all her books. She is
Really?
she is the most. My goodness, nobody writes like Mavis Gallant. Nobody does. You know, Corey, how you were talking about writers who take real things and they make them human and they make you. She can write about the Holocaust, about displacement, about Paris, about beauty, about flower sellers, about anything, and she will make you laugh and make you cry in the same sentence, and she's just every sentence is a jewel. So I think she's brilliant. I think she. Yeah, I think more people should read her. I think we should all be reading Mavis Gallant. So she is brilliant. I am a huge fan of Albert.
I'm just putting Elizabeth is
yes.
saying I didn't catch the author name, and I wrote it down by what it sounded like to me, but can you spell her last name?
Yes, I put her in the chat, Mavis Gallant.
Okay, I think that's our private
if I put
chat.
it in the chat, can everybody read it?
No, I will put it in because that's you can't see the public chat, so
got it. Okay,
put that in there.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I think she is just simply wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Zadie Smith is a contemporary writer who she's a poet, but she's a thinker and a leader, and her words are music, but also she's got depth. She's brilliant. I adore Zadie Smith. She also makes me laugh, and she makes me think. Let's see, who else have I been reading lately? Albert Camus, always. I'm a sucker for Hemingway. I know. Everybody says Hemingway, but I love Hemingway. He's also fantastic. Let's see. Are we talking living authors
Well,
also?
no, but I want to go back to Mavis Gallant. Like, how did you find her? I've never heard of her before, and you're not from Canada.
Oh gosh, how did I find her? Through another author, I should mention, Michael Ondaatje. He's best known for The English Patient, but really anything the man writes, you guys should read. He is wonderful. So Michael Ondaatje is a writer I admire immensely, and his idol of idols, well, one of them, I shouldn't put words in his mouth, was Mavis Gallant. And he wrote there was this one time where I had completely run out of all the books that he'd written. And I was like, okay, come on, Michael Ondaatje, please. And I was just looking for something that he'd written. And I found that he'd written the foreword for this other book called Paris Stories. And there's a love affair between me and Paris that we can go into some other day if you like. But I mean, it was Michael Ondaatje in the title, Paris in the title, sold. And the book Paris Stories was a collection of short stories by Mavis Gallant. And I read his foreword, which is just full of praise and about just her skill and her humanity and just how brilliant she is. And then I went straight into the stories, and I have not stopped since. I mean, I read her like, I think I've read her stories at least a dozen times each, and I will gladly reread them. It's just, she's a treasure. So yes, through Michael Ondaatje.
Cool. That's great. I did have a question. I know this is my big question. Then I know Corey has questions and Stephanie might have questions. But what I really wanted to know is what we went on the walking book tour, and what we usually choose a book that is really connected to the South Coast of Massachusetts. And in this one, we wanted to somehow bring your book in. So we thought, okay, the birds, the sandpipers, they come through the South Coast in September. So we kind of did it around that. And we had a lovely day on the 11th on West Island in Fairhaven. Justin Barrett from the Nascatucket Bird Club took us around. We found some sandpipers and some other birds that were kind of on their way to South America. And what became very clear is you really know your stuff about birds. And so I was curious, like, did the bird theme, because it relates so well to the novel's themes, but did your interest in birds predate the novel, or did you say to yourself, oh, the novel should have this theme about birds? You know, what came first, your interest in birds or the novel kind of needing this theme?
It was more the love of birds than the interest. I didn't have any anatomical, biological knowledge of birds. Poetically, I found them beautiful, and I'd read, and I just always I find these creatures just so free. You know, when you're a child and you're like, what would you like to be? It's a bird. Obviously a bird. What other animal would you like to be? I mean, it's just, they just go. And then migratory birds. And I had read this book by this other author. Her name escapes me now, but it's an excellent book about the relationship between sandpipers and blue. See, I'm sorry, it's been a while since I read that book, but the crabs that have blue blood, and how those crabs are used for pharmaceutical research, and the link. I'm sorry?
The horseshoe crabs.
Correct, horseshoe crabs. And it's a wonderfully written book because it's the science, but it's also extremely lyrical. It's about this woman who follows the journey of the sandpipers. And when I was reading it, I was just overwhelmed by how tiny these birds are and the journey they take. They cross the globe twice. They're teeny tiny. And it was just so daunting. And there was this other passage that I had read once, and that was years ago. And about this ornithologist who observed that birds feel fear just before migrating. And it's not fear like the instant before, it's weeks before. They know they're leaving. They know that it's the unknown and they might die and it's scary and it's going to be very difficult. And birds feel that fear. And there's nothing that alleviates that fear, according to his observations, but the flapping of wings. And when I read that, I was like, that's me. That's any person who's left home. It doesn't have to be an immigrant. I mean, you don't have to have left your country or flood or war to understand that feeling. If you've gone to summer camp, if you've been homesick one night, if you've gone to your first day of school, you know that feeling of I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, but it's an adventure, and then you go and you never regret going, but there is that fear just before you go. And so I think it was just a mix of all these different things. And it was just, when I was writing the book, they just fit so perfectly. I don't think it was a something leading to something. It was
Right.
just,
That's what
they
it
fit.
seemed like. It seemed like a perfect meshing
It
of
did.
the theme and the story.
I think it was just serendipity, really.
Mm-hmm. And
So-
while we were on the, sorry, and then I'll just
Yeah.
Well, while we were on the walk, I guess I didn't even realize until I knew they stopped, and I knew they were doing this huge journey, but Justin told us, oh yeah, they're gonna double their weight here until they go to their next stop. And I said, well, where's their next stop? And I thought he would say New Jersey. And he said South America. I was wow. And he said they can sleep while I don't know about the sandpipers, but some birds can sleep while they're flying. And then it just brought me back to all those airplane scenes you had when he's in the airplane and people are sleeping around. It just sort of like, it evoked all of that. I just thought it was really, so yeah, such a perfect kind of metaphor to use throughout the book. And that's it. I'll let you guys ask your questions.
Well, I wanted to stay on that theme of Melissa, on your question, and this is kind of the writer in me. I'm just curious as to when you were writing the book and then when you were going through and tweaking it and editing, where Yara used the word serendipitous concerning the use of the birds as like this metaphor that just kind of lives throughout the book in all these different ways. How did that just naturally happen throughout the whole book, or were there moments where you were like, I need a little more liminal space language here, or I could put a bird section here? Like, can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I feel like it is so natural, and it is just jam-packed with that theme throughout, over and over again. Even Nassim's name, I mean, it's just like this liminal space metaphor is all over.
I'm flattered that it appears natural and easy. It was not easy. The easy part, I will tell you, and this goes back to I'm really not a very good plotter and novelist. The easiest parts in that entire book to write were the parts about the birds and the parts about the sky and that, because that comes very easily to me. I could go on for pages and pages and pages about how voluptuous the chocolate was and la da 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 da, and probably not pages, but you get my point. So those were just whenever I really just needed to breathe, whenever I just wanted to remember, whenever the book got too heavy, like the interrogation scene, the separation, the Nassim can't breathe, am I being deported, am I not being, whenever it just got too much for me and I couldn't breathe, I would give myself a break and give myself a bird scene, because it was like, okay, let's come up for air. What is this book about? This book is not about executive orders. This book is not about politics. I mean, it is on a lower level, but on a higher level, it's about freedom, and it's about home, and it's about people who do not let themselves be tied down by laws and by hatred and by prejudice and by you were born in this country and I was born in this country. I mean, those things happen, and then there's the choice to rise above it, and that's what the bird scenes were. So I was actually doing myself a favor when I was writing those.
I love that.
Yeah, I definitely throughout the whole thing had fear that it would get pretty dark. Like I definitely cried. Oh, I think I got close to crying like maybe 3 or 4 times, but then right at the end, when Yara's in the hospital and that other little baby passes away.
Yeah.
And I just lost it. And I was curious as to that felt like, I don't know. I felt like that moment was going to be happening at some point, and then it happened. And then there, I don't want to say there was relief at the end, because it was still dark, but there was levity I felt after that moment. I don't know if you want to talk about that, because I'm sure you were talking about the plot, um, when to go there, I guess, the dark moment, and a very humanizing moment too. Because she was, I guess, I could write a whole paper on that, because she was with you in the hospital. She's another mother, another baby, probably, all American. I mean, my brain was just kind of exploding with why you chose that moment, or if you didn't choose it, and again, like your life, it was mirroring your life, and that kind of was serendipitous as well.
That moment imposed itself, I think, into the book. There is no other word for it. It really did impose itself. It did not in and of itself happen when I was at the hospital. It happened many times. So when you're in the NICU, if you've ever been in a NICU, especially when the babies are really critical before they get their own rooms, it's like a dormitory. You go in and it's like rows of incubators here, rows of incubators here, mothers, fathers, or parents, or whatever, and you get a chair next to the incubator, and you can't stay for a very long time, so you have to leave, and then you come back, and sometimes you come back and then there's no baby there,
Wow.
and there's just it was a moment that imposed itself because there are so many layers to that moment. For those of you who haven't read the book, it's code blue. Code blue means somebody's dying, and they run in and there's a baby who dies. And at first she thinks it's her baby, and it's not her baby. It's somebody else's baby. There are so many emotions with that realization, because one, there's relief. Oh my God, not my baby. But then, oh my goodness, yes, not my baby, but somebody's baby, and there is something so humanizing about that it could have been mine. It's not mine. It is somebody else's. Somebody's life just got shattered into a million pieces. And I think I know exactly what that might feel like, because for an instant, I thought it was happening to me. There is just, yeah, I did not choose this moment. It had to be in the book, because at the end of the day, what it says is we're all human. It doesn't matter what passport you're born with. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. It doesn't. At the end of the day, these things will happen, and who you are as a person, and the only thing you can choose is the kind of person you are in these situations, and how you respond, and whether you choose to love or whether you choose to hate. Like that's the only freedom you have, really, in life. I just went very philosophical there. Sorry.
Oh,
Coming back.
I feel I want to go back, and I feel it's connected to kind of what you said about or choosing your volition. You chose to write this story, and it feels, at first you use the word journaling, which for me is kind of organizing your thoughts, getting it out there, trying to have a tether to reality or something. But then you chose to develop it. I'm assuming because you wanted to give this to the world. And I'm again curious as to what heavy lifting you wanted this book to do, or maybe you weren't quite sure, but you felt this creative urge to get it out there. I mean, yeah. If you could talk a little bit about, I'm really thinking, if I could say one more thing, Mary Doria Russell, she's a favorite author of mine, and she wrote these two books in response to the historical revisionism that was happening on the anniversary of Columbus's, discovery of America. And all these people basically saying they could have done it better. And she found that no matter how sophisticated you think you are, if you encounter a new people, you're going to make mistakes. So she reimagined this encounter, but in outer space with a new people.
Okay.
And I don't want to get too far out there, but at the end of the book, she has questions. And she herself is I think an anthropologist by training. These were her first works of fiction. So I kept thinking about you because you're still, you've two books under your belt. And I feel like you're going to write a lot more, but behind all of that, you have a PhD. I mean, you are coming from this very learned place. And I was trying to read in between the lines of your fiction, whether it's nation state discussion or, how cultures capitulate, but still try to have identity. These more kind of erudite, nerdy things. So I was hoping if you could talk a little bit about what heavy lifting academically or more serious themes. I don't know. It could be just as simple as what you wanted the book to do. And maybe it was just catharsis, just to get it out it's not quite formed yet in your head.
Well, there's a lot of much that you've mentioned. Some of it was initially, it was just spilling out of emotions. I've always written because there's so much in here that I need to breathe. I need to get it out. And that's why I write. The reason I wrote this book was, first, I wanted to understand what was going on. And to understand your own emotions, sometimes you just need to put them down on paper. Sometimes you just need to look at them, and sometimes you just need to step away and think, okay, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling. So initially, it was very personal, but then also, I think I can genuinely say that I've read books that have saved my life. I've read books that, an author who's been dead, who's never heard of me or was never writing the sentence with me in mind, writes one sentence, and it's like they reached out and spoke to me and touched me or comforted me or gave me hope or made me see something. And that is just so powerful that a book can do that. And what I was hoping this book would do, I wasn't ambitious enough to think, and I'm still not ambitious enough to think this book is going to change anything. But and this started with The Girls at 17 Swan Street as well, which is about a girl who has anorexia. I wrote Swan Street because if this book can give one person with an eating disorder some sort of insight or hope, or make them feel like, oh wow, I'm not alone, I'm not the only person who feels this way, or some parent or friend or lover who reads this book and goes, oh, now I understand what's going on in the head of a person with anorexia. That's amazing. If I can do that for one person, if I can give one person that feeling that they're not alone. For this book, it was the same. It was, first of all, there are so many real people with real lives. I mean, Sema and Hedy are fictional, but these stories are real stories. There were people separated. There are people who still have not received their visas and who are still overseas. There are people whose lives were completely ruined, who are settled in the US. And it's not just that executive order, passports and laws and politics. People make a decision in an office and it impacts somebody, in another country. If I can give one person hope or make them feel understood, or I don't know, if I can just bring something good to the world with this book, that would be spectacular. So I think that was what I was hoping to achieve. Just say, in the time that this was happening and I was writing this book, there was just so much hate and fear, a lot of it. And that's echoing a bit what you were saying, Corey, just so much fear of, the other, whoever the other was, them and us, and everybody's, there's the good guys and the bad guys, and we're all hating and we're all scared and we're all, building walls and barriers, and that's not what I stand for. I don't believe in that stuff. What do I stand for? I believe in love. I believe in freedom. I believe in family. And that's what I want to put in the book. And that's what I did put. And if that went out, then I think I did something good with this book.
Mm.
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm so glad that you didn't continue in international political science, because I think that you're right. It can make a huge difference in this way. One of the things that struck me when I was reading it is I got it in January, and then I read it on a weekend in February, and it was just when the war in Ukraine was starting, and there were all these pictures on the front pages of the newspapers with the refugees, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I was not aware of the Syrian war and the refugees. Like, the media there wasn't the same coverage, right? And so it was a real kind of wake up call to me. Like you said earlier, if you can open up the world to people, you can make a difference. And I felt like that was it was a wake up call to me to sort of realize, oh, here's a whole area that I'm not learning that much about, so anyway, I'm really glad that you're choosing to be a novelist and not a political scientist.
Thank you. I'm glad as well. I love what I do. I can't believe that I get to wake up every morning and do what I do. I'm very grateful.
And we talked a little bit about the poetry in your book before, because it's very clear that you're a poet. And so are you also, and I actually have a little insight because I've gotten an email from you, and the quote at the bottom of your emails, and I could get it wrong now. I prefer the absurdity of writing poems to the absurdity of not writing them. Is that right?
It's a poem by Wisława Szymborska. She's a Polish poet, and she won the Nobel Prize, and so well deserved. Add her to the list of brilliant authors. Mm-hmm. If you read poetry, and if you don't, you should. She's spectacular. She writes this. Yeah. So the quote is, "I prefer the absurdity of writing poems to the absurdity of not writing poems." And I wouldn't call myself a poet. Again, I have no academic training in creative writing. I've never taken a creative writing course. I've never studied literature. I just love to read. I think my education has happened that way. So I've never studied how to write poetry. I have been writing poems and lyrics, and I've lately been working with this just brilliant, extremely talented musician composer called Alex Wakim, and we did an album of poetry, and we're doing a live show in December, and we're working on a musical. So this is not something that it's more something I do for me, and that I've somehow stumbled into, but there's nothing formal about me being a poet. I think it's very flattering that you're calling me one, but I'm really not.
The book really felt like poetry. It really had that sense that a poet had written it. And
well, thank you.
So I was curious, like, do you write poetry weekly or every day? Do you know what I mean? Is that part of your writing practice?
I don't write poetry per se. And even what you call poetry in the book, I've had to think about this because I have been asked before. I do write in complete silence and I used to think I was crazy and that I was the only one who did that. And then I found out that so many writers have spoken about this. I think there's a music to the words, there's like a cadence to the sentences, and maybe it sounds like poetry, but they have to flow somehow, and I need to hear them. And I can be stuck on a sentence. I spent 3 hours today on one sentence, and my editor will not be happy if she hears this, but it was just not, the music was not right. It's not right. And it has to be right. And there is something to the cadence of a sentence, and to music is not the right word, but I cannot find another word for it. So I think everything that I write is informed by that. It has to sound right in my head. As to specifically sitting down and writing poetry, I don't really. I read poetry. I don't write it.
We have time for one or two more questions. Do you guys, is there any burning things? Elizabeth had said, so nice. Let's see. So nice you all got on the Zoom together. Thank you.
I agree, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for organizing this, ladies.
Stephanie?
I just wanted to say, in regards to what you were saying, like you wrote this book and hopefully it made the experience real, so that when this is why I got excited about it as well, is because anybody who looks at the TV, it doesn't really affect them, so like whatever, right? But when you're reading this, it feels real, and I got excited to tell people because I'm like, this really happened. Like, you got to understand, this really happened. This really happened to people. They really were refugees. They really got sent back. Like, to me, because I don't know if you looked at my store, but my store is about inclusivity and diversity and amplifying people's voices. And so I like for people to know what's going on besides you in your bubble. You know what I mean? Like, so that's why I felt this book so much. I'm like, because I don't think unless someone reads it, they're gonna they don't think about it, out of sight, out of mind. So unless and like Marlissa said, it wasn't on the news. Like, you didn't really see what was going on. So all you heard is every Muslim country shut down, nobody's coming in, but nobody know these are people. These are actual people with families either in the States or back where they're from. So it's like when someone reads that, they're gonna say, you know what? Yikes, I didn't know. I did not know. You know what I mean? So that's what your book resonated for me. It's like I like to share these kind of books with people so that they can see what's going on outside of your own bubble.
Yeah. Well,
I'm also just sharing something from Cheryl. Loved hearing from Yara. Loved the book, and her conversation has enhanced my love of the book.
oh, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you very much for joining us.
And your voice, you should really do your own audio books. You have the most soothing voice. I don't do audiobooks, but I would definitely listen to yours.
How does that work? How do they choose? Like, could you ever say, as the author, could you say, I want to do the audiobook? Or
oh goodness, I would be so scared to do it. Terrible stage fright. I don't know that I don't know that I could ask to do it. I've never tried. Usually the editors pick they'll give you, they'll audition a few actors who they think are right for the part, and they'll tell you, do you have a preference for this one or that one? That's how it's been with my experience. But again, I've only done the 2 books, so give me a few more, and I'll tell you my vast experience.
But we're gonna lobby for you.
We are, because literally I can listen to you talk all day. You just have a very soothing voice.
Thank you.
Corey, how about you? Do you have time for one more question?
Well, I look up a lot. There were probably 4 words I went down a rabbit hole with. Just didn't use too many large words. Miscellany, apogee. I love these little rabbit holes, but like what Stephanie was saying, like I remember when the executive order came out. I remember there was a flurry of coverage with all the ACLU attorneys at the airport. But I also, it was a fire hydrant of news for quite a while. And I don't think that will really go away, but I had forgotten about the extraordinary renditions, the black sites, and your book allowed me the space to Google those again and to remember like the policy that the CIA enacted with torture. And I hope there are more books like yours. I hope you continue this. I feel like this is the authors, the people who've experienced this, are now finally getting time to make sense of things and to write the great novels. I feel like the war in Ukraine has been different than any other war I've studied or experienced on the periphery of, because of their Zelensky's being an actor and understanding a role and having, I don't know who's helping him, but their social media rollout, you know, how they're actual soldiers, you know, former ballet dancers are now on the front lines, and you see photos of them on whatever social media channels you're, and I feel like if Yemen or in Syria, if there had been more of that, Americans and the rest of the world, you know, I hope that in the, like we're seeing that right now in Iran. I have seen so many women with taking their hijabs off, and that feels different than the Arab Spring. I think the whole world was really excited for that. But I feel like novels and the writing of this is, I don't know. I have hope for the future in terms of this. Feels like at least for social media, that I hope there's a better hygiene out there, and on my end as consumer as well. But I feel like folks are, you know, this democratization of that, the best parts of the internet allows, where, you know, regular people can post something that goes viral. I've probably seen almost 10 posts right now from women in Iran, and that feels real. I don't know. I'm kind of have a messy. That's not even a question. That was just kind of a hope, and I was just thanking you for giving me the opportunity to kind of look these things up again and remind myself, because there are things that I feel kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't remember. But also, I'm wondering what do you hope we do with this book? I mean, it's a pleasure, you know, and we did our little tour, and we're having this fabulous conversation right now, and it's going to be online. But what do you hope people do with all of this, Yara?
I don't have expectations, really. I think if it helped somebody reading it, or if it gave beauty, or actually that's interesting because it ties into the novel that I'm trying to write now, that is just taking everything out of me. You were talking about how the ballerinas and the poets and the artists, and I read this beautiful sentence once about, never doubt for an instance how a group of thoughtful people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I really believe that art and literature and beauty and poetry can change the world. This new book that I'm writing is all about how poetry, like not even like great novels, a poem about something beautiful can change the world and can do something good. Victor Hugo wrote Les Miserables hundreds of years ago, and that was a hugely political book. I mean, we read it now and it's a great classic, and it is a great classic, but that is a book that shook the world because it made people understand what it means to be so hungry and so starved for bread that you would go and steal and ruin your life for that piece of bread. And what it means, he humanized social inequality, and he humanized France in such a gorgeous way that is so relevant hundreds of years later. So it's not just social media. We're very lucky that we have social media now. We have access to more people, and we can share and connect with such a larger audience than he could. But I really think that there is, as you said, Corey, a big responsibility for artists and novelists and poets and painters and musicians. I mean, whatever, lovers, go kiss in the streets or something. I'm not saying people should go kiss in the streets. I'm sorry. But I do think that
wrong.
Now I'm gonna go do it.
Way to go,
I do think that there's a big responsibility that art has to spread this beauty, because I do think that it can change things.
I love that, and I think that's perfect ending actually to our discussion. I just love that art is and literature are so important, and I just want to thank you for your time, for your book, for your willingness to consider this idea of the walking book tour.
I'm sorry it didn't work out, but thank you very much for everything you did. I'm truly honored, and it was a pleasure.
And the one thing before we go, I just want to make sure that people know how to to keep up with what you're doing. So is there a place they can follow you or get on an email list or anything like that? And, where is the best place for people to know when the next book comes out?
So the main place is the website. It's yarazgheib.com. I can put that in the chat.
I'll put that in. Yeah, I'll put it on the.
And then there's an Instagram account and a Facebook page associated with that. And you can sign up for the email list. You should know I'm very quiet these days. The reason is I'm working on this novel. But as soon as it is out, you will be the first to know. There's also going to be a big poetry event that whoever has followed me on social media and and subscribe to the email list will also receive an email to that. So you can choose email, Facebook, Instagram, or just, contact me through the website. I always respond. It may take me a while, but I do always respond.
And then Stephanie, I also want you to let people know how they can visit you and keep up with what you're doing.
Oh, yes. Footprints Cafe. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I have a website. footprintscafellc.com. And on Bookshop, you can order Yara's book if you haven't read it. I highly suggest everyone reads it. I absolutely love this book.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. And when I reached out to you and you responded, I pretty much ran to Footprints and I said to Stephanie, she responded. Because you're
we
totally
fanned out.
Us.
Like, you're a celebrity. We literally fanned out. I was like, no way.
So just so you know, you have big fans all over the state.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm honored. And if you're ever in Boston, let's get together and have tea.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. We will, if you want to join our email list, you can go to southcoastalmanac.com and you'll find out about the next walking book tour, which is October 7th in Dartmouth at Destruction Brook Woods. And it's Ben Shattuck's new book, 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau. Thanks for joining us. And thank you all for being here. Good night, everybody.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Nice meeting you.